The stars above Erythra. 9 burned cold and silent, stretching into a black canvas that made the colony feel smaller than it ever had. For the Kryn scouts hovering at the edge of the planet's orbit, it seemed the human world had no defense, no fleet, no soldiers, no resistance at all. "Easy target," one of the Kryn commanders hissed in their sharp, clicking language, his voice vibrating through the hull. "The humans will not even lift a finger!" Below, the colonists of Erythra, 9 went about their daily lives, unaware that the galaxy's eyes were on them, and that danger had arrived before even the first warning had reached them. Mining rigs spun like slow dancers across crimson deserts. Green domes shimmered with the light of life support systems. Children ran along the canyon edges, unaware that the silence above was about to be shattered. And then, the black shapes came. At first, the colonists thought they were meteors. Shadows stretched across the ground, cold and immense, blotting out the sun as they descended. But these were not rocks. The ships were massive, impossibly precise, with smooth metallic curves that reflected the dying light of Erythra, 9's twin suns. They moved like predators, silently, deliberately, as if the planet itself had summoned them. Colonists watched from their windows and landing pads, hearts hammering in their chests. They had heard the rumors of Earth's intervention. They had been told that if the Kryn came too close, humanity would act. But no one could have imagined this, not even the oldest settlers, hardened by years of isolation and survival, could grasp the scale of the threat looming above them. From orbit, the Kryn sent a message, their version of diplomacy, a loud, harsh broadcast meant to assert dominance. "Humans of Erythra.
9, surrender your systems. Resist, and you will be destroyed."
Silence answered them. And then the first pulse hit. It was not a missile, not a conventional weapon. It was a shock of electromagnetic energy that flashed across space, slicing through communications, frying circuits, and leaving the Kryn scouts blind and screaming in frustration. Ships powered down, alarms blaring as their systems failed one by one. The humans had arrived. But these were not soldiers. They were something else. Something the Kryn had never seen. Something efficient, silent, and deadly. On the surface, the colonists could see the first strikes. Small outposts on the planet's equator exploded in blinding flashes. The shock waves rolled through the atmosphere, tearing loose dust and metal alike. From a distance, it seemed like fire dancing in the dark. But unlike natural disasters, there was precision here. No building escaped if it harbored Kryn soldiers. No area survived if it was manned by the enemy. Not a single human operative was visible, yet every Kryn target fell exactly where the humans intended. Inside the ships, humans moved with a speed and focus that seemed almost unnatural. Soldiers enhanced by genetic and cybernetic upgrades coordinated their strikes with a synchronization that made the Kryn think they were facing a single entity controlling them all. Every shot, every maneuver, every attack was calculated to achieve maximum effect with minimum waste. No hesitation, no mercy. Colonists, huddled in bunkers and observation towers, watched in awe and fear. They had always known Earth's intervention was powerful, but this was more than power. This was a demonstration of a species at the peak of its cunning, ruthlessness, and efficiency. A young girl, Mara, perched on the edge of her family's balcony. Her eyes were wide as the sky filled with fire and shadows. Are they humans?" she whispered to her older brother, Jaren. "They're executioners," he said softly, his voice trembling. "Not soldiers."
"Executioners."
Earth doesn't send armies. It sends judgment. The Kryn fleet tried to regroup, but panic had begun to ripple through their ranks. Ships that had once moved confidently now floundered as if their minds were paralyzed. Their sensors were unreliable, their weapons misfiring. What they had believed to be an easy conquest had turned into a nightmare. From the surface, colonists could hear faint rumblings, the vibrations traveling through the ground as massive ships fired downwards. A mining station miles away from the first explosion shook violently, forcing miners to hold onto rails to avoid being thrown off their feet. Dust clouds rose in great plumes, mingling with the fire in a terrifying, almost beautiful display of destruction. High above the planet, the human executioners moved without a sound. Small teams, invisible to the naked eye, struck the Kryn forces with terrifying precision. One team disabled a Kryn warship's engines, sending it careening into another ship like a falling star. Another team used electromagnetic pulses to blind a patrol fleet, causing ships to collide and explode in bursts of fire. Every move was intentional, every strike calculated. There was no chaos, only perfect control. Colonists realized something chilling. These humans were not fighting for territory, not for politics, not even for survival. They were fighting to eradicate threats. And the message was clear. If you are a Kryn soldier, you do not exist to Earth anymore. Back on one of the remaining Kryn ships, Commander Valen slammed his clawed fists against the control panel. Sparks flew, and the warning lights flashed.
"How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our technology—"
"Our strategies? Nothing works." "Sir," his lieutenant replied, his voice shaking, "they are something beyond understanding."
"They are not soldiers. They do not follow patterns we can predict."
They... Valen's eyes narrowed. "Then we have faced the wrong humans. We thought they were like us. But they are hunters, executioners. And we are prey." On the surface, the colonists were slowly coming to terms with what was happening. Some fled underground. Some recorded the events with their cameras, realizing that what they were witnessing would define the history of their species. The humans above were not here to defend them from the Kryn. They were here to deliver judgment on anyone who dared oppose them. Mara and Jaren watched as a Kryn patrol ship, once hovering confidently in the air, erupted in a flash of orange fire. The hull disintegrated mid-air, leaving only a twisting column of smoke.
They just destroyed it instantly," Mara whispered.
Jaren nodded grimly. "And they'll do the same to anyone else. Anyone who thinks they can fight Earth." Meanwhile, the human ships continued their methodical assault. The Kryn fleet, once numbering in the hundreds, was now down to scattered fragments. Those that remained tried to flee, but escape was impossible. The executioners had mapped every trajectory, every angle, every escape route before the Kryn could even consider it. Colonists began to whisper among themselves. "Why aren't they talking to the Kryn?" one old miner asked. "Why aren't they negotiating?" A scientist, watching from her lab, shook her head. "They don't negotiate. Earth doesn't negotiate. They destroy. They execute. That is their answer." By the time the first human strike teams began moving across the planet's surface, the Kryn realized their mistake. What had been a confident occupation mission had become a desperate scramble for survival. Those who survived the orbital assault found themselves facing humans who moved with the speed of thought, striking from places they had never seen, and disappearing before any counterattack could reach them. It was not war, it was a massacre. It was judgment rendered without trial, swift and unflinching. As night fell over Erythra 9, the colonists looked up at the skies, now lit by the flicker of fires and the hum of energy from human ships. They had survived the initial assault, but their hearts were heavy with the truth. Earth had arrived, and it had brought executioners, not soldiers. Mara clutched her brother's hand. "Will they leave?" she asked, fear lacing her voice. Jaren shook his head, his eyes reflecting the burning horizon.
"No. They came to finish this."
And nothing stops them once they start. High above, the human ships regrouped, silent shadows in orbit, waiting for the next wave of Kryn resistance to emerge. But Earth's executioners did not need numbers nor conventional weapons. They were human ingenuity perfected, trained, enhanced, and ruthless, and they would ensure that no one who dared challenge humanity would ever survive to tell the tale. 9 watched in awe and terror as the first night passed, knowing their world had become the stage for something far larger than themselves, something that would echo across the stars, something that would make every alien race in the galaxy think twice before ever crossing humanity. And above all, they understood the hardest truth of all. The humans on those ships were not here to fight. They were here to execute. The morning after the first strike, the surface of Erythra 9 was quiet, almost eerily so. Dust still hung in the air from the crumbled Kryn outposts. Fires smoldered across the plains, but there was no sound of human soldiers celebrating. The executioners did not need to celebrate. They had already won. From orbit, the remaining Kryn fleet regrouped in panic. Commander Valen's warship hovered far from the planet, its sensors struggling to detect the positions of the human ships. Every moment without contact or intelligence drove him closer to madness. "They're everywhere," hissed his second-in-command, a female Kryn officer named Shalra. Her multifaceted eyes reflected the destruction below. "Every strike is coordinated. They seem to anticipate our movements before we even make them." Valen's claws clenched. "That is not possible. Humans are clever, yes, but not omniscient." Shalra shook her head. "No, Commander. These are not clever soldiers. They are predators, executioners.
And they do not fight for glory or survival.
They fight to finish, to erase." Valen took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling with a hiss. "Prepare the fleet. We regroup. We strike with everything we have. They cannot withstand us all." But Earth's executioners were already waiting. Every human ship, every operative on the surface, moved as if they knew exactly what the Kryn would do next. Small strike teams descended from orbit to intercept fleeing ships. Ships attempting to flee to the outer rim were disabled by precise electromagnetic pulses. In every case, the humans acted before the Kryn realized they were under attack. On the surface, a small human detachment appeared at a Kryn ground fort that had survived the first orbital strikes. From a ridge above, the colonists watched as the humans approached. They carried no banners, no symbols of allegiance, only weapons and equipment that shimmered faintly in the morning light. Their movements were silent and deliberate, yet unnervingly fast. Inside the fort, Kryn soldiers scrambled to prepare defenses. Turrets rotated, shields activated, and soldiers shouted orders. But it was already too late. The humans struck with surgical precision. In moments, energy pulses disabled the fort's shields, and small drones slipped through the defenses to sabotage the Kryn engines and weapon systems. Colonists gasped as they saw the fort collapse in a flash of controlled destruction. No humans were visible outside the fort, yet every Kryn soldier inside was neutralized. "They don't even enter," one miner whispered to another. "They just
destroy. They are executioners," the miner replied quietly.
Earth doesn't fight. It erases.
Meanwhile, Commander Valen convened a meeting of the surviving Kryn captains. His warship's bridge was filled with tension. "We are not dealing with soldiers," he said, his voice low but sharp. "We are dealing with something else, something beyond our understanding. We must change tactics. We must be unpredictable." A young Kryn captain, clearly shaken, spoke up. "We cannot predict them. Every escape route we plan is anticipated. Every attack is countered. It is as if they are everywhere at once. Valen's claws rapped against the control panel. Then we strike where they least expect us. We take risks. We hit them directly. The humans did not wait. They had anticipated this exact move. While the Kryn fleet attempted a direct assault, human strike teams from orbit descended to intercept, striking key engines and weapon systems before the Kryn even realized their trajectory. Ships collided, some exploding mid-space. Small attack craft were ripped apart by invisible forces, leaving only debris. On the ground, the colonists saw humans in motion again. These were not ordinary soldiers. Their bodies moved with unnatural coordination. Some carried long-range rifles, others advanced weapons that fired beams of concentrated energy. But it was not their weapons alone that were terrifying. It was their intelligence, their speed, and their ruthlessness. Every Kryn movement was countered before it could succeed. In the Kryn fleet, Commander Valen realized the horrifying truth. "They are not soldiers," he muttered to Shalra.
They are not even human in the way we know humans.
"They are hunters, executioners." Shalra's multifaceted eyes widened. "We may not survive this." Valen slammed his claws on the console.
Then we fight, or we die.
"But we will not surrender. The humans did not negotiate, nor did they pause." Small groups of operatives descended to key locations across the planet. Kryn communication arrays, weapon depots, and supply lines were destroyed with methodical precision. In every case, the humans acted silently, leaving no trace of their presence except the destruction they caused. Colonists watched as humans disabled Kryn energy shields without firing a single visible shot. They sabotaged engines with tools that shimmered and moved almost like living creatures. And then they vanished, leaving the Kryn soldiers bewildered and terrified. Valen's desperation grew. He ordered a team of elite Kryn warriors to intercept the humans on the ground, but it was a futile effort. The executioners anticipated their every move. In a brief, almost invisible battle across the desert plains, the Kryn squad was eliminated, leaving only scorched sand and twisted metal. The colonists whispered among themselves, some in awe, some in terror.
They are unstoppable, one said.
"They do not need numbers," another replied. "They do not need conventional weapons. They need only their will, and that is stronger than anything the Kryn have." As the day passed, the humans continued their methodical destruction. They did not chase every enemy. They only struck where it mattered. Their logic was perfect, their timing flawless. The Kryn, despite all their training and experience, were no match for humans who had evolved beyond conventional warfare. Valan, now shaken but still defiant, realized that conventional tactics would not save them. He sent a desperate message to the Outer Kryn command. Call for reinforcements. Call for weapons. Call for anything. The humans had left their own signal. It was not a demand, not a negotiation. It was a warning. Earth had arrived, and Earth's executioners were already judging.
On Erythra 9, the colonists began to understand the full extent of the humans' power.
Mara and Jaren moved among the bunkers, watching the skies as smoke rose from destroyed Kryn positions. They had survived the initial assault, but they could feel the weight of what was happening. Humanity had arrived, not to fight, not to negotiate, not to defend. They had arrived to execute. And the realization filled the colonists with awe and fear in equal measure. They had always believed Earth would protect them if needed. But this was not protection. This was an example, a statement, a warning. By evening, the Kryn fleet had been reduced to scattered remnants. Valan realized that any attempt to regroup would be futile. Every approach had been anticipated, every move countered. The humans were not just strong. They were unpredictable beyond comprehension, and every human operative seemed to act with the precision of an entire army. In the last moments of daylight, the colonists saw the humans strike one final blow from orbit. A massive Kryn cruiser, thought to be the fleet's last hope, exploded in a controlled detonation that left nothing but debris. The humans did not fire from within the cruiser. They had disabled it silently, almost invisibly, leaving no trace of themselves. Mara watched the smoke rise, her small hands trembling. They did that without even being there? She whispered.
Jaren nodded. Yes.
That is what makes them executioners. Earth does not fight.
Earth judges, and the Kryn dial.
They were judged. Night fell over Erythra.
9. The fires of destroyed Kryn positions burned in the distance, casting long shadows across the red desert plains.
The colonists had survived, but the air was thick with understanding. Humanity had shown what it was capable of, and the galaxy would never be the same. Above, the human ships moved silently, already preparing for the next phase of their operation. The executioners did not sleep, did not celebrate, and did not hesitate. They were waiting for the next Kryn movement, the next threat, and they would strike again with the same perfection they had displayed today. The colonists knew the truth. Humanity had arrived. Not as soldiers, not as diplomats. Humanity had arrived as executioners, and those who faced them would not survive. The first day of the human strike ended, but it was clear that this was only the beginning. The Kryn had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. Every explosion, every disabled ship, every silent strike from orbit was a message. Do not challenge Earth. Do not test its patience, or be erased. And in the hearts of the colonists, a mix of fear and admiration settled. They had seen the might of humanity not in war, but in judgment. They had seen what it meant to face an enemy that did not negotiate, did not retreat, and did not hesitate. Mara and Jaren stood together on the edge of a canyon, watching the horizon burn with the remains of the Kryn. Will they leave now? Mara asked quietly. Jaren shook his head, his eyes reflecting the glow of distant fires. No, they came to finish this, and nothing stops them once they start. The stars above Erythra, 9, seemed darker that night, as if even the heavens understood the weight of what had happened. Earth had arrived. Earth had judged, and the Kryn had learned too late that humans do not send soldiers. Humans send executioners. The Kryn survivors regrouped in the dark edges of the system, their ships damaged, their crews shaken. Commander Velon floated in the command room of his flagship, his claws tapping against the metal console. Every system was patched together with jury-rigged circuits, and alarms blinked relentlessly. His fleet was a shadow of what it had once been, and still, the humans did not pause. They did not rest. They did not negotiate. They are too fast, Shaura said, her eyes reflecting both fear and disbelief.
We cannot even plan before they counter every move. Velon's voice was low, almost a hiss. Then we adapt.
We hit them differently. They expect precision, calculation.
We will be chaotic, unpredictable.
But even as he spoke, humans were already moving. From orbit, strike teams descended, invisible to the naked eye, to intercept the Kryn patrols. Energy pulses disrupted their engines. Small attacks disabled shields. In every instance, the humans acted before the Kryn could even recognize the threat. The survivors were scattered across the deserts, forests, and mountains of Erythra. 9, each group hunted and neutralized as if a single mind controlled the entire human force. On the surface, Mara and Jaren watched from a high ridge. The fires of destroyed Kryn positions painted the sky red. The humans were silent shadows, moving with a precision that seemed impossible for living beings. Jaren's voice was barely a whisper. They're everywhere, but nowhere at once. Mara's wide eyes reflected both fear and awe.
How can they do that? They are not ordinary humans, he replied. They are something more.
Faster, smarter, deadlier. The Kryn, desperate and cornered, began deploying their secret weapon. The Obscura cloaks, devices that could render their ships invisible to sensors and shield them from conventional detection. Balin hoped these cloaks would give them the upper hand. The humans had destroyed everything else. They could at least not anticipate invisible attacks, but the executioners had already accounted for it. Humans launched specialized drones that could detect the tiniest disturbances in energy flow. Cloaked ships were revealed in an instant. Missiles and energy pulses struck before the Kryn even realized they had been detected. One by one, cloaked vessels were disabled or destroyed. A young Kryn pilot screamed as his ship spun out of control. He had thought himself unseen, untouchable. Then the sky lit with a flash, and his ship tore apart. The debris fell toward the planet like falling stars. Valan's claws gripped the edge of his console. "Possible," he hissed. "They cannot see through our cloaks."
They cannot anticipate this. They anticipate everything, Shalra said quietly. Everything we do, I think. They are predicting us, Commander.
Every move we make, every plan, it is already known. On the surface, human strike teams moved with unmatched efficiency. Small squads disabled Kryn ground batteries without firing a single visible shot. They planted precise explosives, used energy disruptors, and vanished before the Kryn even understood what had happened. Colonists watched from behind rocks and bunkers, silent, frozen in awe.
Jaren whispered, "They do not fight.
They hunt.
Mara shivered.
And they never miss?
They never miss, he said grimly.
As the Kryn attempted to regroup on the planet, a human squad appeared at the entrance of their largest remaining stronghold. The humans did not knock. They did not shout. They simply moved, silent, deliberate, unstoppable. One by one, the doors, walls, and defenses of the stronghold were rendered useless. Energy pulses disabled shields. Drones sabotaged weapons. Humans appeared in the corridors just long enough to eliminate the Kryn guards, leaving only chaos behind. Inside the stronghold, Kryn soldiers scrambled. "They're inside!" one yelled, panic rising in his voice.
"How did they get through our defenses?" "They are executioners," another whispered, fear choking his words.
"Earth doesn't send soldiers. They send judgment." Valan's fleet, meanwhile, tried one last desperate tactic, a direct assault on the humans' orbital positions. He ordered every surviving ship to converge on a human transport, hoping to crush them before they could strike again. But the humans anticipated it. From orbit, strike teams targeted key Kryn vessels with surgical precision. Engines exploded, shields failed, and ships collided in mid-space. The humans' timing was perfect. Every attack was countered, every maneuver blocked. The Kryn fleet had no escape. On the ground, the colonists continued to witness the humans' terrifying efficiency. Mara saw a human operative appear atop a ridge miles away. In seconds, he disabled an entire Kryn patrol attempting to flank them. The soldiers never even knew what had hit them. Jaren turned to Mara. "See that?" he said.
They're not just fighting. They're controlling everything, everywhere.
"They are. Perfect."
Valan, realizing the futility of conventional tactics, decided to gamble everything.
He activated a device on his flagship, a massive energy field intended to create confusion and disrupt human coordination. If it worked, the humans would be forced to adapt, perhaps make mistakes. But the humans were already one step ahead. Specialized drones intercepted the energy pulse, redirecting it harmlessly into space. The human ships adjusted their positions instantly. No human operative faltered. The Kryn device failed spectacularly, leaving Valan's fleet more exposed than ever. On the surface, the humans continued their hunt. Small teams appeared, disappeared, struck, and vanished again. Energy beams burned through Kryn weapon systems. Explosions rocked the deserts and plains. The humans were everywhere and nowhere, like ghosts moving with deadly purpose. The colonists began to murmur among themselves.
"They're unstoppable," one miner said. "They don't need numbers," another replied. "They don't need conventional weapons. They only need themselves." As the Kryn tried to mount a final resistance, the humans revealed a new tactic. Strike teams coordinated attacks from multiple directions simultaneously, confusing the remaining Kryn forces. Each attack was calculated to isolate the enemy, disable their weapons, and remove them before they could respond. Valen watched helplessly as his fleet fell apart around him. Balin relied on his brain. Balin relied on his scours. The humans were not just strong, not just clever. They were inhuman in their efficiency. They acted with a precision, speed, and ruthlessness no alien force had ever faced. On the surface, a human operative moved silently across the plains. He planted explosives at a Kryn supply depot, then leapt to another ridge, already preparing his next target. There was no fear, no hesitation, no emotion visible, only perfect focus, perfect execution. Colonists could hardly breathe as they watched. They're not even like us," Mara whispered. "There's something more," Jaren said, his voice low. "Something evolved. They are executioners, Mara. And the Kryn, they are finished." As night fell, the humans paused briefly, not to rest, but to observe, calculate, and prepare for the next move. The Kryn survivors were scattered, terrified, and broken. They had underestimated Earth. They had assumed humans were like any other species, limited, fallible, predictable. They had been wrong. From orbit, the human ships watched silently. There was no celebration, no pride, no recognition of victory. Every move, every strike was calculated for maximum effect. The executioners were not warriors. They were judgment incarnate. Valen, realizing the hopelessness of his position, prepared one last desperate strike. He would attempt to retreat to Kryn space, gather reinforcements, and return. But even as he activated the engines, his sensors reported new anomalies. The humans were already anticipating his move. Drones appeared around his ship, disabling critical systems. Energy pulses disrupted his engines. His retreat was cut off before it could begin. On the surface, the colonists saw the final blow. A massive Kryn command post, thought to be the last point of resistance, erupted in a controlled explosion orchestrated by the humans. The building, its weapons, and its inhabitants were gone in seconds, leaving only smoke and silence. Mara and Jaren stood together, their eyes wide.
They didn't even enter, Mara whispered. They didn't need to, Jaren replied.
Earth doesn't fight. Earth executes. That is all they need. By the end of the day, the Kryn had been reduced to scattered survivors, hiding in caves, deserts, and forests. The humans had achieved total dominance without losing a single operative. Their methods were terrifying, precise, and unstoppable. Colonists began to understand the weight of what had happened. Humanity had arrived, not as soldiers, not as diplomats, not as negotiators. Humanity had arrived as executioners, and those who faced them, like the Kryn, would not survive. As the night stretched across Erythra, 9 fires from destroyed Kryn positions glowed in the distance. The humans prepared silently, watching, calculating, and waiting. The first battle had ended, but the war, or at least the next phase of it, was only beginning. And above all, the colonists realized the hardest truth. The humans did not fight for glory, for survival, or for conquest. Humans fought to execute judgment, and the Kryn had been judged. The Kryn had one last hope. Scattered and battered, they fled to the inner moons of Erythra. 9, using the jagged terrain to hide what remained of their forces. Commander Valan, battered but unbroken, gathered every surviving ship and soldier, preparing for a desperate final stand. If Earth's executioners could anticipate everything, he would force them into something unpredictable, something chaotic.
"Listen to me," he barked to his captains. "We cannot fight them as they fight us."
We cannot anticipate them, but we can do one thing: make them confront chaos. Hit hard, hit fast, and do not stop until we force them to react. If they anticipate us, we will become unpredictable. If we fail entirely. But we fight, or we die.
Shalra hesitated, her eyes wide. "Commander, even chaos will not stop them."
They are beyond our understanding. Every move we make, every strategy, it has already been accounted for. Valen slammed a claw against the table. Then we will make them adapt in real time. We will strike from every direction. We will attack where they least expect. And if they can overcome all of this, then perhaps they are gods. High above, the human ships had already mapped the moons and terrain. Executioners had spread across the system in small, silent teams. They were waiting, calculating, and observing every potential Kryn move. On the largest moon, Kryn troops prepared fortified positions. They believed that here, among craters and mountains, they could at least hide from orbital surveillance. But humans do not need visibility to strike. They deploy nanotech drones that map heat signatures, energy flows, and movement patterns. Within minutes, the humans knew exactly where every Kryn soldier was. From orbit, a small human strike team descended silently, their suits blending with the shadows of the rocky moon. They moved with inhuman precision, avoiding detection, disabling surveillance systems, and quietly eliminating isolated patrols. Energy pulses cut power lines. Drones infiltrated communication relays, leaving the Kryn blind to the humans' approach. Valen watched from the bridge of his flagship, tension gripping him like steel. "How can they do this?" he muttered. "How do they know every move we make?" "They anticipate us," Shalra said softly. "Every decision, every maneuver, it is already predicted. I think they are not just humans. They are executioners in the truest sense. They do not just fight, they judge. And they have judged us." Balon clenched his claws.
"Then we give them judgment back. We fight here and now. Chaos is all we have left."
The Kryn launched their desperate assault. Missile swarms, cloaked attack ships, and ground-based weapons opened fire in every direction. Explosions rocked the moons, shaking craters and sending plumes of dust into the thin atmosphere. The humans, as always, were ready. They did not panic. They did not retreat. They adapted instantly. A human operative leapt from a ridge, landing silently among a group of Kryn soldiers. Energy rifles fired, cutting down enemies before they could react. Another operative deployed a drone swarm, which disabled multiple missile launchers simultaneously. Human coordination seemed impossible. They were everywhere and nowhere at once. Colonists observing from Erythra, Nine's orbit, were awestruck. Mara clutched Jaren's arm, eyes wide. "How can they do all that? They're not even in the same place as them." Jaren shook his head, voice tense.
"They don't need to be. They anticipate.
They calculate. They execute. That's what makes them humans. And executioners." Valen's desperation grew. The humans were not just countering. They were dismantling. Every Kryn plan, every last hope, crumbled beneath precise human strikes. Cloaked ships were revealed, missile swarms destroyed before launch, and ground batteries neutralized silently. The Kryn soldiers could not fight an enemy they could not see, could not anticipate, and could not outthink. Realizing that conventional battle would fail, Valen resorted to a more extreme tactic. He activated the moon's unstable core, intending to trigger massive seismic activity to force the humans into the open, where the Kryn could target them en masse. The humans anticipated this as well. Small strike teams moved underground and along cliff faces to avoid surface tremors. Drones monitored the planet's geology, predicting the tremors and countering them. When the first explosion shook the craters, the humans were already in position, ready to strike again. The Kryn plan failed before it could begin. Balan's voice rose in frustration.
Impossible. Everything we do,
They anticipate. They are everywhere at once, Shalra said quietly, almost to herself. They are executioners, Commander. They do not follow conventional rules. They only execute judgment.
And we are the accused. On the ground, human operatives moved like shadows.
They struck silently, leaving chaos in their wake. A Kryn war machine, heavily armed and thought invincible, collapsed as humans disabled its core systems from multiple angles. The crew never saw the humans. They only felt the destruction. Colonists on Erythra. 9 watched in awe as human squads eliminated Kryn soldiers with methods that seemed impossible. One operative moved across the ridges, planting precise charges that disabled several bunkers at once. Another intercepted a Kryn convoy before it could retreat, leaving only scorched metal and wreckage. They're perfect, Mara whispered.
They never miss. They never hesitate. They are executioners, Jaren replied.
Earth doesn't fight wars. Earth delivers judgment.
And that is why the Kryn cannot survive.
Balin realized the hopelessness of their situation. His fleet was shattered, his troops demoralized, and his weapons neutralized. The humans were not fighting for territory or survival. They were fighting to erase the threat entirely. In a last-ditch effort, Valen ordered a final attack on the human orbital fleet. He concentrated all remaining firepower on a single point, hoping that overwhelming force could break through. But humans had anticipated this. Strike teams had already positioned themselves strategically around the Kryn formation. Missiles were intercepted mid-flight. Engines were disabled. Shields were overloaded. One by one, Kryn ships exploded, colliding into each other in a violent display. Valen's fleet was annihilated in minutes. On the surface, the human operatives completed their mission with cold efficiency. No Kryn survived the coordinated strike. No enemy soldier escaped. The humans did not celebrate, did not gloat. They moved on silently, already calculating the next threat in the system. Colonists looked at the humans with fear and awe.
They did all of that without even being seen, Mara whispered. They are executioners, Jaren said.
And now the Kryn are finished.
The moons and craters of Erythra. 9 were silent once more.
Fires burned from destroyed positions, and the winds carried the scent of scorched earth. Humanity's message had been delivered. Challenge them, and you would not survive. Valen's survivors had nowhere to hide. Every strategy, every hiding place, had been anticipated and neutralized. Humans were not just soldiers or hunters. They were judgment incarnate. They moved with purpose, precision, and absolute focus. Mara and Jaren looked across the plains where the remnants of Kryn technology smoldered.
Will they leave now? Mara asked, voice trembling.
They came to finish this, Jaren replied, and nothing stops them once they start.
Above the planet, the human fleet regrouped silently. Executioners did not speak, did not celebrate, did not rest. Their mission was complete, but their vigilance never wavered. They were waiting, observing, calculating the next potential threat. The colonists understood the truth of humanity in that moment. Earth did not send soldiers. Earth did not negotiate. Earth executed judgment. Those who had survived this attack had been spared not because humans could not destroy them, but because they were not the target. Every Kryn soldier had been judged, every threat eliminated, and the galaxy would remember. As night fell over Erythra, 9 The stars shone cold and indifferent, but the humans in orbit were anything but indifferent. They were the final reckoners, silent and unstoppable. Their methods were terrifying in their precision. Their presence overwhelming. Their message absolute. Humanity cannot be challenged.
Humanity will not negotiate. Humanity executes.
And in that quiet, observing darkness, the galaxy began to understand the terrifying reality. Earth had arrived, and the Kryn were gone. But this was only the beginning. The humans would not stop at one planet. They would not pause in the shadows. They were executioners, and the universe would learn, sooner or later, that judgment came with humanity's name.
The Kryn survivors had nowhere to run.
Erythra. Nine's moons were littered with the remnants of their fleet. Their soldiers were scattered, hiding among craters, mountains, and caverns. Commander Valen's mind raced, clawed fingers tapping the console in frustration. The humans were everywhere and nowhere, striking without warning, striking with precision. "We cannot escape them," Shalra whispered, her voice tight with fear. "They anticipate every move, every strategy, every plan. They are unstoppable."
Valen's jaw clenched. Then we must force them to face us directly.
"If they cannot anticipate chaos, perhaps we can turn the tables. We will fight for our lives, for the survival of our species, or we will die trying." The Kryn gathered in a large cavern beneath the largest moon, establishing a fortified command base. Mines, energy shields, and automated turrets lined every entrance. Valan had chosen this place carefully, believing that the humans would have difficulty detecting their position. Here, he hoped, the humans' surgical precision could falter. But humans did not falter. They never falter. From orbit, executioners mapped every inch of the moon, sending down strike teams to monitor every ridge, every tunnel, every hidden passage. Drones swarmed silently, invisible to the Kryn's eyes, listening, analyze, and reporting back to the human commanders. The first human operatives arrived at the cavern's entrance just before dawn. They moved like shadows across jagged rock, avoiding sensors, bypassing traps, neutralizing the automated defenses with calm precision. To any observer, it would seem that no living beings had entered. Only destruction appeared behind them. Turrets ceased functioning without explanation. Energy fields collapsed. The humans had touched the defenses in places invisible, unreachable, untouchable. Inside the cavern, Kryn's soldiers scrambled, their weapons firing blindly into the dark, hoping to hit something, anything. Commander Valen barked orders, desperation creeping into his voice.
"Hold positions! Do not let them through!"
"They cannot be here yet. They cannot know everything." Shalra shook her head, her eyes reflecting the cavern's dim light. "They know. They have always known."
They are not fighting soldiers. They are executioners. They do not make mistakes.
They do not hesitate. And they are here. And then the humans struck. They appeared silently, their figures blurred in the shadows, moving faster than the eye could follow. Kryn soldiers fired wildly, but their weapons found only air. Energy pulses struck the walls and floors, cutting power to defensive systems. Explosions erupted, precise and controlled, isolating Kryn squads one by one. Colonists watching from orbit and hidden observation posts held their breath. Mara clutched Jaren's arm. They're inside the cavern.
"Shh!" whispered. "They are everywhere," Jaren replied, his voice tense.
"They are executioners, and the Kryn, they are doomed." Balin realized the horrifying truth. The humans had already calculated every possible defensive position. Every trap, every barricade, every hidden passage had been accounted for. The executioners moved with the efficiency of 1,000 armies. Yet there was only a handful of them. Every strike was deliberate, every elimination precise. The humans were not just fighting, they were delivering judgment. A human operative leapt onto a ridge above a Kryn squad, firing a concentrated energy beam that disabled their weapons instantly. Another operative slipped through a vent, appearing behind a turret and shutting it down with a single pulse. Explosions, smoke, and silence followed each strike. The Kryn fought bravely, but their bravery could not overcome the humans' perfection. Valen realized that conventional courage, conventional skill, and conventional strategy were meaningless. The humans were not limited by error, fear, or hesitation. They were executioners.
"Commander!" one soldier cried.
They are moving too fast. We cannot stop them.
They are human. Valen finished the sentence for him, voice low and bitter.
"And they are gods of war!"
Despite their fear, some Kryn soldiers tried a final desperate maneuver. They set charges to collapse parts of the cavern, hoping to crush the humans in rock and debris. But the humans anticipated this as well. They used specialized drones to dismantle the explosives, redirecting the energy safely into tunnels with no one inside. Then they struck. The executioners moved through the tunnels with ghost-like precision, eliminating squads silently. Every Kryn who saw them knew instantly that escape was impossible. Their weapons fired only into empty corridors. Their shields collapsed without warning, and every step they took was anticipated by the humans' superior intellect. Valen finally emerged into the central chamber, a massive underground hall where his forces had made their last stand. He expected to find resistance, chaos, maybe even hope. Instead, he found silence and calculated destruction. Humans were everywhere, and nowhere at once. Operatives moved along walls, across ledges, and through vents, striking with perfect timing. The Kryn soldiers fell before they could organize a defense. Valen's claws shook as he raised his energy staff. His last weapon, he charged toward the humans, ready to fight for the survival of his species. And then, in a blur of movement faster than his eyes could follow, two operatives appeared on either side of him. One discharged a beam that neutralized his staff. The other moved in, and in seconds, Valen was on his knees, staring at the humans who had ended his fleet, destroyed his soldiers, and now judged him personally. He had faced countless enemies. He had conquered worlds. He had believed himself clever, unstoppable, and strong, and now he understood the terrifying truth. Humans do not fight like others. Humans do not hesitate. Humans do not lose. Humans execute. The last of the Kryn soldiers fell in the cavern, not with courage, not with honor, but with the terrifying realization that they had never truly been in a battle at all. They had been observed, calculated, and erased by beings who were beyond understanding. Outside, the colonists watched as smoke rose from the moon's craters. Mara's voice trembled. They're finished? Jaren nodded, eyes wide with awe. Yes.
"The Kryn are gone, and the humans, they are not soldiers.
They are executioners." The human operatives regrouped silently in the cavern, checking systems, ensuring no survivors remained. There was no celebration, no emotion. Their mission had been clear, and they had completed it. They moved on with calm precision, ready for the next threat, wherever it might appear. In orbit above the planet, the executioners prepared for departure. Their ships were silent shadows against the stars. They had not come to conquer. They had not come to negotiate. They had come to judge. And their judgment was complete. Mara and Jaren, still hiding among the ridges, felt a mix of fear and relief. Humanity had saved them, yes, but in a way that left no room for misunderstanding.
Humans were not like any other species in the galaxy.
They were perfection in motion, relentless, and absolute in purpose.
They don't celebrate? Mara asked.
They don't need to, Jaren replied. They only execute. That is what makes them humans. That is what makes them unstoppable. Commander Valon, the last of his species' leadership on Erythra. 9 had been removed from the equation. The Kryn homeworld would never hear his reports. The galaxy would never know the full story, only that Earth's executioners had arrived, and the Kryn had disappeared without trace. From orbit, humans observed Erythra. 9 for a final time. They had shown the colonists what humanity could do. They had erased a threat entirely, and now they would move on, leaving a planet safe, a warning delivered, and a legend in motion. The colonists began whispering among themselves.
They are different,
one said. They are not just humans, another replied. They are the reckoning. The final word, the executioners of the universe. The humans' ships ascended, disappearing into the void. The fires of destroyed Kryn positions still smoldered across the moons and plains. Silence returned to Erythra, 9 heavy and absolute. But the message had been clear. Earth had arrived. Humanity had delivered judgment. And any species foolish enough to challenge them would face the same fate. Mara looked up at the stars, her mind struggling to comprehend what she had witnessed.
Will they come back? She asked softly.
They will, Jaren said.
They will always be ready. They do not fight for glory.
They do not fight for politics. They fight to execute. And the universe will learn that judgment comes with humanity's name. In the distance, the remaining wreckage of Kryn ships glimmered like dying stars. The galaxy had changed forever. Earth had revealed itself not as a player among many, but as the final reckoner, a species whose skill, strategy, and will were absolute. High above, the human executioners moved silently among the stars, preparing for the next threat, the next challenge, the next judgment. The universe would remember their arrival. The galaxy would tremble at their precision, and every civilization, every species, every individual would know one immutable truth. Earth does not send soldiers. Earth sends executioners. The stars above Erythra, 9 seemed colder, sharper, and brighter that night. The humans had left, but the echo of their judgment lingered. It was a warning, a promise, and a legacy. Humanity had declared itself not just a survivor, not just a fighter, but a force beyond comprehension. And the Kryn had learned, far too late, that in the presence of humans, there is no mercy.
There is only execution. The colonists watched until the ships vanished into the black.
They had survived. They had witnessed the unimaginable. And they understood that the universe had changed. Humanity had revealed itself in full power as the species that would not bow, would not negotiate, and would not be stopped. And in that truth, every corner of the galaxy would feel the shadow of Earth, silent, perfect, and unrelenting. Humanity was no longer just a species. It was judgment incarnate,